You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello, world, and welcome to Tales from Hollywoodland, a veritable feast of movies, television, Broadway, showbiz stories, and even a little bit of news and gossip with Julian Schlossberg, Arthur E. Friedman, and Stephen J. Rubin. Today, we're celebrating episode 100 and talking about the greatest movies of all time. And now, here's Steve.
Hi, guys. I'm just so excited, everybody. We're celebrating episode 100. I cannot believe we've made 100 of these. And I think someone told me that most podcasts, they don't get past 15, right, Mike?
That's true. And so we're already breaking a record there.
We're breaking records left and right, and we're delighted to cover the greatest movies of all time. Now, these are our personal opinions, so we may pick a movie that you hate, but we love. But I think you'll find that most of our choices today in multiple genres will be movies that are very dear to your heart. And the first genre that we're going to talk about is the greatest dramatic movie of all time, drama-wise. And I'm going to go to Julian first. All four of us are chiming in on this.
Well, happy anniversary to everyone. 100 shows. Isn't that great? Okay. So I know this is a hard one because drama can be in a lot of other areas, but I put down The Godfather. Now, I know that could be under crime or some other place, but I think it's a terrific drama. It's my favorite of so many movies that have been made, and I loved Brando in it. And as good as Godfather 2 is, I missed him. I missed him in Godfather 2. So Godfather is my film.
Every time it's on, I drive my wife nuts because I stop off at The Godfather and I always catch it, and she'll walk into the room and say, "You're not watching The Godfather again." But it's true. Arthur, what's your drama?
Well, drama. I saw a movie the other night called Double Indemnity. That is a drama, again, in perhaps a different genre, but it's a pretty dramatic film. That's as great a movie as I've ever seen, period. We should all watch that. Godfather, how can you argue with that? It's, again, if people are gonna talk about what are the greatest films ever made, there's no way that Godfather will not be mentioned in the top 10 list. Impossible.
No, so true. So
probably
true.
5.
Mike, what's your choice?
Mine actually is a classic, and first time I seen it was when I was in school. We were studying the dramas of the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, and I fell in love with Casablanca. It is a wonderful, wonderful film.
I was saying Casablanca to me is the greatest romance film, but you see, that's the thing. It can go into all different things.
Many of the films that were on the list, we probably could do that with.
Yeah, there are multiple genres. I picked 12 Angry Men. I've probably watched it 50 times. I know how it ends, but I still watch it. It has one of the greatest casts of character actors ever assembled, led by Henry Fonda, who was a leading man. And if you haven't seen 12 Angry Men, you are missing a corker of a drama.
Sidney Lumet's great first that he ever directed for movies, and also a film takes place basically and a little bit in a little room in the back.
No, it's a one-room movie.
You know, I want to say this so that in today's world of watching these epic, special, all kinds of effects in so many movies, the special effects in 12 Angry Men was the dialogue. It was the acting. It was.
And we should give a nod to Reginald Rose, who wrote the screenplay. Also wrote it for the original teleplay. Let's move on to, we've gone drama. Now we're going to go to comedy. Arthur, why don't you start? What's the what's the greatest comedy of all time?
Well, it's probably arguable, but I'd have to rate. I would make it two different movies, both with the same star. One would be Pink Panther, the original Pink Panther with Peter Sellers, and the other one, a black comedy, but nonetheless made me laugh like crazy, and that's Dr. Strangelove. Uh, so I would have it as an entry: Pink Panther and Dr. Strangelove. And there are moments in the Pink Panther that are so funny. A great movie by Blake Edwards, totally entertaining. But the Sellers stole the movie and became a character, Inspector Clouseau, and then they made A Shot in the Dark, and some others. But in Doctor Strangelove, again, there's another top 10 film.
No, so true, so true.
Yeah, but it was hysterical. I mean, he was hysterical.
Absolutely.
That's me.
Mike, what's your favorite comedy of all time?
Originally, I was going to do It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World, but we had talked about it a few weeks ago when we did our, favorite, movies that, we are, and such. So, but I'm going to actually go with Young Frankenstein. And a lot of people don't realize, they always think it's a Mel Brooks movie. It's actually a Gene Wilder movie. Gene Wilder created it. He, did all the, writing up the characters. He, helped produce it, and he brought in Mel to direct it. And it was magic from there. The cast, the crew, it hits on every cylinder. And it's, you can be in the worst mood and you turn that movie on and you're cracking up within 10 minutes.
Mike, I'm copping out on my choices, and you're right. It is Young Frankenstein. There's really no question about it. And although how much ever I loved Pink Panther and Doctor Strangelove, Young Frankenstein is the funniest movie ever made, period. There's no question about it, except for one thing. The outtakes were just as funny or funnier than the movie.
Julian, what is your contribution to this category?
Well, I have to say that to me, the funniest movie that made me laugh the most was The In-Laws, with Alan Arkin and Peter Falk and Dick Libertini. It is one of the funniest films, and it was an interesting story because Arkin and Falk met, they got along well, and they went to Warner's and said, we want to do a movie. Get us somebody to write us a movie. They got Andy Bergman, and the film was just the funniest damn film. I don't think I've laughed that hard ever in any movie. And, of course, I love Young Frankenstein and Strangelove, but no, In-Laws for me is as funny as anything. And the second one quickly would be The Birdcage, which I really found funny, with unbelievable performances by not only Robin Williams and Nathan Lane, but Gene Hackman in comedy. You don't expect to see Gene Hackman in a comedy. He's brilliant in it. And Hank Azaria. So that's mine.
Isn't Gene Hackman the blind man in Young Frankenstein?
Yes, he is.
He sure is. He sure is.
Well, I this is a tough category because I love comedy, but I have to say that Airplane in 1980 to this day is still pretty much one of the funniest movies ever made, and it's based on a dramatic movie about an airplane in trouble, but they turned it into the ultimate spoof. And I love spoofs if they're inspired, and Airplane was especially inspired.
It's interesting because the movie that you're talking about, it was, Airplane is literally, almost scene by scene the same movie as this. And that's what makes it even more amazing what they did.
It's so true. So true.
There's also a partial, I'd like to mention a partial greatest comedy of all time, but it's not the whole movie. It's just partial. And it was called The Party. Blake Edwards, the Party with this Peter Sellers again, with most of the cast from the Pink Panther, as a matter of fact. But the parody they do there on Gunga Din at the beginning is as funny as film can be. So The Party, partial.
Okay, very good. Now we're going to move on to the action genre. It seems like every movie that's released today is an action picture. Try to find a comedy today, and I'll go first. I think the original Die Hard, which I've probably seen 80 times. It's always on in all its sequels. But Bruce Willis fighting off all those German thieves in Nakatomi Plaza is just, to me, pure fun and action, and kind of defined the action picture. That movie now quietly is 37 years old and still has power.
It's one of my favorite Christmas movies. It's awesome.
What's your favorite? What's your choice in the action genre, Mike?
For me, I was torn, but it came down to the very first Raiders of the Lost Ark with Harrison Ford. And it was just wonderful as a kid, being there with a bucket of popcorn, being scared by, when he was going through that cave at the very beginning and the snakes coming out of the mouths and, and then the giant boulder. And it was just, literally from that scene, it kept you on the edge of the seat till the credits went. And it was wonderful.
Absolutely. What about you, Julian?
Well, I have to say, you guys have come up with two terrific films. I think Die Hard and Raiders were as good as it's going to get. But a little more sophisticated, perhaps, was I thought a terrific job that they did with the movie of The Fugitive. I just thought Harrison versus Tommy Lee Jones, it just kept me on the edge of the seat, hoping that old Harrison would be found innocent, even though, of course, we knew the end. So I would have to jump in with Fugitive.
One of the best lines in any movie. I didn't kill my wife. I don't care. I love that. It's just awesome. Awesome.
What about you, Arthur?
Well, I think that, years ago, great action films had great stories. Today, great action films have great action, and they go from one action piece to another. I find it hard to accept those along the lines of a film like Jaws, which was, to me, the greatest action film I've ever seen, and it came from a great book and had a great story. Was so well acted. Everybody thinks of all the stuff with the shark, but Jesus, the acting of everybody in that movie was outstanding. Beginning was all of them. Robert Shaw, Dreyfus, and here we are today. We're in the 50th anniversary of that movie. It's unbelievable. That, to me, is the best action movie I've ever seen.
Very, very cool. Very, very cool. Okay, so moving on in genre, we're going to go to science fiction now. Mike, why don't you start us off?
Darn. I was hoping to hear what other people had to say. But for me, it has to be Stanley Kubrick's 2001. It paved a way for a whole new generation of science fiction films. Before that, a lot of the science fiction movies were very B-grade movies, and there were some amazing science fiction coming out of the 1940s, 1950s especially, and then going into the 60s. But Stanley Kubrick took it to a whole new era and made you care for these characters. To me, I felt like it was the first modern special effects film. You didn't feel like the spaceships had strings on them, or it just felt like they took the time for it. And it paved the way for Star Wars completely. And, when I look at this with the effects and everything, you would have not gotten, the battles in space like you had with the Death Star and, the Rebels and such, if you didn't have the Jupiter and the planets and the monoliths and everything from 2001. It was just amazing.
I think Doug Trumbull's effects revolutionized science fiction at that time. Absolutely. Arthur, your best science fiction film of all time?
My favorite is Planet of the Apes, the original movie.
There you go.
Right around the same time.
Of seeing that it was they were on Earth at the end was great. Maybe not the greatest science fiction film ever made, but it's my favorite. And I know there's the Star Wars, and there's certainly a great few. 2001: Space Odyssey. I'm aware of those movies. Planet of the Apes is my subjective favorite.
Julian?
I love the idea that we all feel pretty much that there are two kinds. What we know is considered the greatest, i.e., 2001 or Star Wars, and then what our greatest is, which often isn't what was considered the greatest because we have our own personal taste. Mine run to that little guy, E.T. E.T. just got me. I have to say, I wanted him to get home. I really was caught up in that. And as Arthur said, that's when you had stories. That's when you had a screenplay. That's when you had something to root for and care about rather than a car chase or a plane being crashing. So, yeah, it would be for me. I did. And also, the scariest sci-fi was the original The Thing, directed by Howard Hawks. As a kid, I crawled under the seat in front of me. I was so scared of that film.
Well, for me, this is a tough choice because I love science fiction, but the original Time Machine, 1960, with Rod Taylor playing Wells, the time traveler. Today, it has enough charm for 10 movies. It is one of the great science fiction classics. We all remember the Eloi, the blonde people who were being terrorized by the Morlocks who lived underground. But the Time Machine's use of anachronisms as he's piloting his way through time is just one of the great movies.
Once again, it's hard to argue with E.T., what Julian said. Honest, it's not that I forgot it. It's just that, he takes some of these things for granted. I love the Jiminy Glick, Marty Short interview he did recently with Steven Spielberg when he asked Spielberg, when are you going to make the big one? When are you going to make the one that connects with people? And Steven Spielberg fell apart. But that's the Marty Short character. You have to understand that character. It was crazy. But,
yeah.
Okay, so now...
Jiminy
Glick, right.
Now, Julian kind of crossed over a little bit with The Thing because it was horrific. So now we dance into the horror genre, and I'll start off by basically talking about a horror film with no visual horror that still scared the crap out of me. Julie Harris, Richard Johnson, Claire Bloom, and Russ Tamblyn, Robert Wise directing The Haunting, based on a Shirley Jackson novel. I defy anybody to sit and watch that movie in a dark house alone.
That is awesome.
What about you, Mike?
For me, it has to be John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh.
And scared the living crap out of me. and it leaves you asking at the end, did they kill the creature? Or is it still alive? Is humanity doomed if it can get out of Antarctica? And it was just amazing because you are literally looking, you had Keith David and you had Kurt Russell staring down each other. And it was, who was the creature or who was human? It was just awesome.
What about you, Julian?
Well, I think it would have to be old Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. I mean, Psycho, I remember the first time I saw that movie and couldn't believe that Janet Leigh got killed off so early. That was the first shock. And then don't go into that house. Just don't go into that house. And then Marty Balsam going up the stairs. It still haunts me. I thought that Psycho was as scary as any movie I ever saw.
And you can't forget the Bernard Herrmann music that made it equally scary with the accompaniment. Pretty crazy. What about you, Arthur? Horror?
Horror. When I was a kid, I saw The Wolfman. It scared the hell out of me with Lon Chaney. When the bellhop says, open the windows. No, you ought to get out of here because the moon was coming out. That was pretty funny, but we didn't know. We were just scared. We had a movie called Halloween, the original Halloween. We owned the rights to it in New England, as I mentioned before. And in the previewing the movie, the week before it opened, we had a full house, probably 1,000 people who came in to see Halloween. And I have never seen a reaction like that in any movie. The screaming was unbelievable, and it was frightening. It was really a scary film. So that's in my mind for sure. The interesting thing about that is that when we opened the pre-opening ad, I had our advertising guy put in the word "You will scream," and "scream" was huge. You will scream, and he had little things coming out of the SCR or EAM, and it was almost like Halloween Scream, And what happened was Bobby Weinstein went ahead and took that title, Scream, and made a franchise out of it. It worked.
I'm surprised you didn't hire an ambulance to sit in front of your theater.
Well, that's been done before.
It was William Castle.
Yes,
did those, absolutely. So let's move on. Keep us moving here. Now we go from horror to romance. Now Julian indicated a little bit with Casablanca being a romantic film. Was that your romance choice, or did you have a different one?
Well, that would be certainly a romance choice. Have a different one to talk about, which was more current, and that was When Harry Met Sally, which just really hit me all the way. I thought it was just a terrific romantic movie, and of course, the wonderful Moonstruck by Norman Jewison. Those were two more current than Casablanca, but really terrific movies.
How about you, Arthur? Romance?
Romance, outstanding film for me, The Way We Were. Nothing better, maybe some as good, but the blend of the great score, the Marvin Hamlisch score, the Redford character, the Streisand thing, it was just a beautiful romantic film. There was one from my teenage years, which is memorable. It was the Eddie Duchin story with Tyrone Power and Kim Novak. And the interesting thing there was I took a date to see it, and when that movie was over, she was crying. It was just a beautiful film, and we had a great time that night. So I took 2 other dates, and all 3 dates we had a great time. It was unbelievable. If you haven't seen it, the Eddie Duchin story stands up.
How about you, Mike? Romance?
For me, well, Julian picked my first choice. So, When Harry Met Sally is awesome. But I went with the other direction a little bit. I went with The Princess Bride, which is a wonderful, wonderful film. Yeah. And, as I say to Judy all the time, as you wish. And she says, so it's such a wonderful film. And, it has swashbuckling, it has fantasy, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful film. And, you can't top it. And, Buttercup was beautiful. So it was great,
Can't do this category and leave out of Africa. Impossible.
Very, very romantic.
You probably can't leave out Ghost either.
Yeah, beautiful film.
So my choice, actually watched the other day on 4th of July, hardly the 4th of July movie, but I watched Notting Hill with Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant. And that is a very romantic movie. It's funny, but it has one of the most satisfying endings of any romantic movie I've ever seen. It really is. And just a fun movie to watch.
How about Love Actually?
Love Actually, another great romantic movie. Now,
good genre.
So now we're going to move and put on your cowboy hats, everybody. Let's talk about Westerns. Julian, start us off. Yes. What's the greatest Western of all time?
Well, I have 2. I have High Noon, which was just sensational, and Gary Cooper, never been better. And the parallel to the McCarthy period of what was going on, where people would not stand up and were kind of folding. And it's a terrific Western. And the other is Spencer Tracy in Bad Day at Black Rock. Boy, oh wow, what a movie. What a sensational film. So those would be my 2 favorites. I know I'm supposed to say one, but I just can't do it without giving the both of them.
Mike, what about you?
Oh, for me, I had it as The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Oh. It's such a fun film. And, it has the classic soundtrack, and it's a tale of revenge, and, and it's a spaghetti Western, but it was done so well. And that's what made it it was a great thing.
I chose The Professionals, 1966, Burt Lancaster, Lee Marvin, Woody Strode, Jack Palance, Robert Ryan, Claudia Cardinale with all her glory. A movie that just sings to me. Everybody talks about The Wild Bunch being the greatest Western. I like The Professionals. Arthur, what about you?
A lot of people talk about Stagecoach. They talk about The Searchers. For me, there's one movie and one movie only that's the greatest Western. In my opinion, that's Red River. John Wayne.
Take him to Missouri, Matt.
Yeah. Great movie. One of the great movies of all time. Forget about the genre.
Oh, yeah. In fact, John Ford people would come up to John Ford and thank him for making that movie. And it was Howard Hawks.
Right.
And he'd say, thank you. Let's move on to musicals. Such a subject. And we'll start out with our musical maven, the guy who knows Broadway to a T, Julian Schlossberg. What do you think?
Not even close. Nothing comes close to the greatest musical ever made is Singing in the Rain. Unbelievable. The combination of using old music and then getting Comden and Green to write Moses the Poses, plus the old great chestnut Singing in the Rain. Wonderful musical. When Gene Kelly sang that song, he had 102 temperature, and you would never think as he's jumping in the puddles that he's an ill man, but he was sensational. And the second would have to be The Wizard of Oz.
Good choices. Definitely good choices. Both my choices. What about you, Mike?
For me, my number one was Mary Poppins, actually, and loved all the music of it. We used to sing all the songs as kids growing up, and it was just so catchy and everything. And my second choice, of course, would have been The Music Man with Robert Preston. It's just so wholesome and so wonderful.
What about you, Arthur?
My favorite musical of all time is a compilation called That's Entertainment. I loved it. And I believe it to me, it just worked as the stick out of all great musicals, a compilation of all the great musicals. And they just pulled it off beautifully. Who directed that?
Well,
Jack Haley.
Jack
Haley Jr.
Well, he was great. We all agree, I trust. Not that it's the greatest of all time. That's my belief. But you all had to love That's Entertainment.
Just watched it 2 nights ago. Loved it again.
Yeah.
Well, Julian's
and I launched it at the Ziegfeld Theater, so I have a veiled kind of paternal feeling about that movie.
And it hit too. It was a big hit.
Well,
giant hit.
Julian took Singing in the Rain, which was my favorite, but I will say that next to Singing in the Rain is a musical I am constantly whistling in parking structures because of the great audio I can get in the parking structure. The Sound of Music.
Can't argue with
Very
that.
cool. Yep, that's awesome. From that opening scene, the hills are alive, and it's just amazing. The cinematography was just wonderful in that.
It's the greatest musical movie that features Nazis ever made.
Wait, you're wrong. The producers.
No, I'll grant you that. It's a tie there. Okay, so we've done musicals. Now we go into a very somber genre, but a thrilling genre, the war film. Arthur, greatest war film of all time from your seat.
Well, tough one. I have 2. One is Patton. Patton jumped off the screen. Great film. George C. Scott could never be better. And the other one is Battleground. Even though it would be easy to say Saving Private Ryan, which was a great movie. I've always understood that Steven Spielberg watched Battleground 100 times before he made Saving Private Ryan. Battleground is a great movie, black and white. You think you're in Germany or France, and you're on the MGM back lot. I mean, if that didn't win the Oscar for Best Design, my God.
With the song and dance man as the lead, Van Johnson.
Yes, Van Johnson. Yeah, what a great movie.
It did win the Oscar that year for Best Original Screenplay. It was written by Robert Pyrosh, based on his actual experiences in the Battle of the Bulge. He was not a member of the 82nd Airborne or the 101st Airborne, but he was a infantryman fighting in the Bulge, so it had a certain realism. I chose Saving Private Ryan. I've been studying war films since college. Saving Private Ryan was just off the charts for me in terms of gritty and character driven, and the parlance that the soldiers used I had never heard before. There were words that described the combat action and how soldiers talk, which I thought was really awesome.
And the opening sequence nothing's ever touched it.
Nothing ever duplicates it. What about you, Mike?
For me, I was like, had to go back and forth on a couple different movies, but I ended up with Apocalypse Now. And it's just, it was so spooky, and Martin Sheen was so good in that film. And it was just, and it's been emulated on so many different levels since. And it was just such a great film.
Didn't anyone ever see To Hell and Back? What a hell of a movie with Audie Murphy.
Great movie, but we got to move on to Julian. Julian, your war movie selection.
Looks like I'm with you guys. I didn't expect to join you all, but Saving Private Ryan was something that I thought was special. I couldn't believe those first 5-10 minutes that just took you right in. And it was quite something to see, and it was a top film. The beginning also, the coming on the beach in Apocalypse Now also is an extraordinary opening where they come on that beach with Duvall. And I'll tell you a quick story. Bobby Duvall told me he took the role because even though he was this killer, he was killing Vietnamese, there was a baby on the beach. And he picks up the baby, holds it, saves it, continues to shoot, because he loved the contradiction that he was killing perhaps their family of that baby. But that was cut out. The baby was cut out. He was in a rage.
Do you like the smell of napalm in the morning, Julian?
I prefer it in the afternoon, Steve.
Okay, so there's the war film. There's only 2,000 other war movies we can mention. Now we move into a genre which is probably the most successful genre in the history of Hollywood. Virtually every movie makes money, and that is animated movies. And Mike, we'll start with you. What's your favorite animated film, or what do you think is the greatest animated film of all time?
For me, it goes back into the 1930s, and I am going to pick Fantasia from Walt Disney. And it took classical music and brought it to life with animation. And you had, dancing hippopotamuses and crocodiles. You had a demon, harassing a village at night with storms and such. It was just amazing to see. And then you had the Sorcerer's Apprentice with Mickey Mouse, and he's the only Disney character that actually appeared in that film. And then you had the dinosaurs, and it was just wonderful. And the music, and it educated so many people and gave people, who would have never experienced classical music other than if they got the chance to see a symphony performing somewhere. And it was just amazing to see. And Disney took a huge risk, and it paid off.
Arthur, animation.
Easy. Pinocchio.
Oh.
Scared the living hell out of me and my friends.
Wait, this isn't supposed to be horror.
What a great movie. With the nose growing and the lying, and oh my God, what a great film. I loved Up as well. I did love Up. Ed Asner was so great in that movie. But Pinocchio, to me, was the most profound of all the animated films I've ever seen.
It was amazing when we went to go see Up at the movie theaters. In the first 5 minutes of the movie, who would have expected a Pixar movie that half the audience was crying in the first 5 minutes of it, and it just went from there, and it was just so wonderful.
You mean Up, Mike?
Yeah,
Up. Yes.
Well, speaking of Pixar, my choice is the original Toy Story. And I find that sometimes a favorite is a movie that not only speaks to children, but speaks to adults at the same time. And what Pixar has done beautifully in the majority of their movies is reach both audiences. And I just loved Tom Hanks and Tim Allen and that wonderful cast of goofy characters in a movie that is just fun to watch. And of course, Toy Story was one of the first 3D animation movies. So you felt like it was live action when it was animation.
Don Rickles, Mr. Potato Head.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I want to jump in and say in 1940, when Fantasia was made, I agree with Mike. It was also groundbreaking use of multi-channel stereophonic sound. This would never been done before. This was what was done. Disney went all out on this. And as Mike mentioned, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, The Dance of the Hours, The Rite of Spring, and you've got A Night on Bald Mountain. So you've got all this incredible music. It's a stunning movie. And once again, I was privileged to bring it back in the 70s at the Little Carnegie Theater, where we broke all kinds of records. So, yes, Fantasia's my choice.
It did go well with marijuana, though, didn't it?
Not as well as 2001.
Okay, we've covered animation. We are now moving into one of my favorite genres, which is the thriller. And we're not talking about the fight between Muhammad Ali and whoever he was fighting in Manila. We're talking about
Joe Frazier.
Joe Frazier. There you go. Thriller movies. Arthur, it's a big fan of this genre. What's your favorite, or what is your choice for the greatest thriller of all time?
3 Days of the Condor.
Oh,
Loved it.
Definitely.
And again, a movie that stands up today. If you see it, it's every bit as great as it was then.
Mike?
For me, it has to be Silence of the Lambs. I love that movie. It kept you on the edge of your seat from, the opening scenes, where, you're introduced to Jodie Foster's character, and then you meet Hannibal Lecter. And Hannibal Lecter became one of the greatest villains of all time. And Anthony Hopkins just took it through the roof. It was just such an amazing film.
What does he say at the end when his guests arrive? He says, "Excuse me, I have to get off the phone right now. My lunch has arrived."
My lunch has arrived. I'm meeting an old friend for lunch.
What about you, Julian? Thrillers?
Well, I don't know if you guys would consider it a thriller, but it thrilled me, and that's the Chinatown. I thought it was just one sensational movie with one of the best scores I've ever heard in any movie. But Nicholson, Faye Dunaway, John Huston. I mean, this is one terrific movie. Bob Towne at his best as the writer, Polanski at his best as a director. And again, you're not sure what's happening. And you fight right to the end. You just, well, after all, Jake, it's Chinatown. There you go.
And it had old friend Dickie McKellion.
There you go. I went into, since I kind of pray at the feet of Alfred Hitchcock, I consider North by Northwest one of the great thrillers of all time, with a touch of wit, a touch of comedy, but the action sequences, particularly when he's being chased in that cornfield by that biplane, pretty cool stuff. North by Northwest.
Oh, it's also in a lot of ways, North by Northwest is a precursor to the Bond movies also.
Yes, very much so. Very, very much so. So let's move on to fantasy, which is a big genre, certainly fueled of late by all the digital effects that we have these days. Mike, why don't we start with you? What's your favorite? What do you think is the greatest fantasy movie of all time?
Has to be for me, probably the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Rings, the very first one, just set the whole stage for it. Peter Jackson took, a movie that, and based off a very famous set of books that was, so people were going, it's impossible to film. It's going to be, there's no way you can do it. And he did the impossible and he brought it all to life and it was beautiful. It truly, truly was beautiful.
I remember when Ralph Bakshi did the animated version, which was so bad, and it's based on such a great book series. I was fearful that they would never be able to make it. And I love the Lord of the Rings movies just so much. What about you, Arthur? What's your favorite fantasy?
It's probably wouldn't be listed in this genre, but it's the movie 10 with Bo Derek.
10?
Yes.
Because that's a fantasy.
That's a great fantasy film. What are you kidding?
Yeah, I guess.
I don't mean I'm just saying that, that's a great fantasy film. I'm a hard put on this one, Steve. Give me some help. Tell me what you think is the greatest fantasy film.
Well, I think that I would have chosen Lord of the Rings, but I'll go back to my youth where I really first discovered movies. And Ray Harryhausen was a wonderful special effects guy who studied at the feet of the guy who did King Kong. And he did a film in '63 called Jason and the Argonauts. And for me, it is just a wondrous movie with just a great storyline about ancient Greece and the battle to find the Golden Fleece, with set pieces that make your jaw drop, particularly their battle against Talos, the giant titan on the island of Bronze. But that is my favorite. And then, of course, The Wizard of Oz has to be the greatest fantasy film of all time on a big scale. And it's arguably the movie that has been seen by more humans on the planet Earth than any other movie.
I don't know if you've seen any recent pictures, Steve, but they're doing The Wizard of Oz at the Sphere in Las Vegas. And to help promote it, they actually put a giant set of witch feet coming out from underneath the sphere. It looks awesome. It really looks.
I wonder how sock sales rose after they showed those socks, the famous witch's socks. What about you, Julian? Fantasy?
92 years ago, a movie called King Kong was made. And as you said about Ray having studied with the King Kong folks, there are still special effects that they don't know how they did in King Kong 92 years ago. It was incredible to me as a kid to see that movie. And actually, I watched it about a year ago, and it still holds up. Fay Ray can really scream.
I mean, you're with that ape all the way. When he's on the Empire State Building battling those biplanes, you are rooting for Kong. Take down those planes.
Absolutely. No question.
Darn straight. That is really straight. It's been remade so many times.
And I have to say the Peter Jackson remake has some amazing moments, but it doesn't have the charm of the original. It doesn't.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
I do have an honorable mention for fantasy, though. I don't know if you guys have seen. It's a movie called Big Fish. It's done by.
Oh yes, I did.
It's a Tim Burton movie, and it is just beautiful. And it is, story about a son trying to connect with his father, and his father was always larger than life with all these stories and tales, and a lot of them turned out to be true to a point. And it was just wonderful to see.
I was friendly with Terry Moore, the actress, and I asked her one time about Mighty Joe Young, and she said, "Hey, a girl's got to work, Mighty Joe Young was after King Kong, of course. That's
right, of course, with Ben Johnson, I believe, great cowboy actor. Okay, so our final category of the day, and we've covered some great movies, is biopics. Now I'll start. Arthur actually picked this film in his war movie category, but for me, George C. Scott's performance in Patton is a pretty much amazing biopic. A movie that was put together at a very difficult time for war movies, which is at the height of the Vietnam War. in 1969, 1970, and virtually every actor in Hollywood turned down the role until Francis Ford Coppola teamed up with Edmund North and wrote the Patton script with that amazing opening sequence where Patton comes out on a stage with an American flag behind him and says, "No bastard ever won a war by dying for his country. He won it by making the other poor dumb bastard die for his country." And that got it off onto a very...
But that scene was added because the original screenings of it played a bit flat because there really was no action in the movie until about 15 minutes in. And they thought about, and I think it was Coppola's genius that he wrote that scene with the American flag. What a scene.
It was the one movie that during the height of the Vietnam War united Doves and Hawks. It's an amazing movie. What about you, Julian? Favorite biopic?
Well, I don't know about the favorite, but one that I really liked and really got to me was a very little movie, even though it was directed by a very important director, Robert Mulligan. And it was the story of a baseball player that Arthur probably knows a lot about, Jimmy Pearsall. And the film was called Fear Strikes Out. And a very, very moving, interesting film with Anthony Perkins and Carl Malden. And the problem, talk about father and son, the father and son problem there. Very interesting movie. Fear Strikes Out. Did anybody see it besides me?
Of course. Malden was incredible in that film, and it's a true story. Jimmy Pearsall went nuts.
What about you, Mike? Biopic?
For me, I had to search high and low for this one. And this one actually really tugged at my heartstrings. And it's one of Steven Spielberg's close personal movies from his heart. It's called Schindler's List. And it was heartbreaking to watch. But it told the story of Oskar Schindler and how he, was able to save, not a ton, but quite a few Jews through his factory, and able to manipulate the system in some ways. And it was just wonderful.
I think it's certainly the greatest thing Liam Neeson's ever done, and he was just perfect at casting for that. Just so charismatic. But the chilling character in that movie was Ralph Fiennes' concentration camp commander. Ugh.
Oh, he was so evil.
Oh, so evil. So evil.
And then
there again, you're into rarefied air of one of the greatest movies ever made.
Yeah, no, it is definitely. When you were talking about Carl Malden in Fear Strikes Out, it reminded me of another movie where Carl Malden gave good support, which was The Birdman of Alcatraz with Burt Lancaster as Robert Stroud and Carl as the warden. That's also a very, very powerful film for the listeners who really would love to dive into a biopic. Well, we've done a heck of a job, I think, covering a lot of...
You didn't ask me my favorite biopic.
I apologize. I said Patton was mine. What is your favorite biopic?
I got to tell you guys, my favorite biopics all are under the heading of musical biopics. Hard to beat Yankee Doodle Dandy, James Cagney. Funny Girl, Barbara Streisand. And a little movie called The Jolson Story with Larry Parks. Hard to beat those. Julian, would you agree?
Oh, man, do I agree. And boy, did I love The Jolson Story as a kid. And then they did Jolson Things again. But guys, we're not done. What about political movies? There are some great political movies. Let's talk about that.
Oh, why don't you start us off, Julian, because this is your topic.
All right. All the President's Men. Come on, guys. Everybody knows the end, and yet you don't know what's going to happen. You can't believe how these guys, Redford and Hoffman, are going after what's going on with the Deep Throat. Who's Deep Throat? And the supporting cast of Jason Robards and Jack Warden and Martin Balsam. I almost thought I was in 12 Angry Men again. So it's one hell of a movie. And the only other one that I had a lot to do with post after it was made is A Faith in the Crowd, that even though it was made 68 years ago, predicted not only what would happen, but actually did happen in using television to get elected.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Well, there was also at that time All the King's Men, which is Huey Long, the story based on Huey Long, a great political film. You can't argue with All the President's Men. Again, it's one of the great movies ever made. I loved a movie called 7 Days in May for a political thriller. That stands up to this day as well. But it's all the President's Men. It's not going to get better than that.
I actually remember a movie. I think Gore Vidal wrote the play. It's called The Best Man.
I'm sorry, what?
The Best Man. Henry Fonda versus Cliff Robertson. It takes place at a political convention as they're determining the candidate. And the sparring and the political battle to choose the candidate, I thought was really well done. They're
Outstanding film.
Yeah, outstanding film. What about you, Mike?
Was that the candidate?
The candidate's another good choice. Mike, what about you?
For me, I have to say, all the President's Men was up there, but I also loved the movie JFK, Oliver Stone's film.
Yep.
And it was so well done, and it made you question so much and show how much the government can shut down what they don't want people to hear. And I just loved it. And the story of Jim Garrison was just awesome in that.
Great movie.
And yep.
We did leave out one category, guys, and we can save it. Not now. We can do it some other time. The sexiest movie ever made, Onward.
Well, I think 10 would be up there.
In many
I think
ways.
you mentioned that one already.
Any time that Marilyn Monroe came on the screen was the sexiest movie ever made. But I would.
Speaking of that, shamefully, we left out Best Comedies, Some Like It Hot. My Lord.
And well, obviously, we left out like dozens of movies.
Yeah.
By the way, we have a little feature in our broadcast each week now where we talk about the last movie we saw. I have to highly recommend a movie that's currently on Prime. It's a thriller, and there have been really a lot of crummy thrillers lately, but this one is a lot of fun. It's called Heads of State. It's Idris Elba and John Cena and Priyanka Chopra Jonas. And I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It is a fun romp of a thriller action. There's some comedy in it. Basically, John Cena plays the President of the United States. Idris Elba is the Prime Minister of England. They hate each other, but soon we realize they have to work together. So I recommend that. Mike, what was the last movie you saw?
We actually last weekend watched an amazing documentary on Max or HBO. It is called Pee-wee as Himself, and it's the story of Paul Rubens.
Oh.
And it is in 2 parts, and it is wonderful because for those who don't know, Paul Rubens passed away 2 years ago now, and he was battling cancer, but he didn't let anybody know that he had it. And it was just wonderful. And it was a great documentary that I highly recommend. It takes a very intimate look at him, and it also just shows how the character of Pee-wee came about, some of the difficulties he ran into, and some of the controversies. They did not back away from any of that, which was really good.
What about Arthur? Arthur, what was the last movie you saw?
Just yesterday, I saw a movie I've seen maybe 8 times before. It gets better every time I see it. I hope and wish that they would force feed this movie to everyone who is in Congress, the United States, or any of the Senates or legislatures in the states throughout the United States, called 1776. That is a great movie. And it's so timely and it's so great. It's about the adventure of how we became a country. And it's I recommend it highly. And it's been out there for 50 years plus.
Mike, I think we've come to the end of our show. Can we turn it over to you?
Of course you can. I think we've lost Julian because Julian's been having some connectivity issues, sadly enough. But thank you, everybody, for putting up with us for the last 100 episodes. And gentlemen, it's been a pure pleasure to work with each and every one of you. So it's been a great, great thing. But you've reached the end of this episode of the Tales from Hollywoodland podcast. Always remember, we couldn't do this without you. We want to hear from you, so please write us anytime at talesfromhollywoodland@gmail.com. Remember, you can find us wherever fine podcasts are found, and now you can even find us up on our YouTube channel. If you made it this far into the episode, why not subscribe and give us a thumbs up? Or if you're listening to us, please give us 5 stars. If you're into social media, please check us out on Instagram and Facebook. Before we get out of here, let's check with the guys and see what's happening on their podcast this week. Steve, what's going on over on Saturday night at the movies?
We're continuing my archival interview with screenwriter Richard Maybaum, who wrote 13 James Bond movies. We get a little bit into the nitty-gritty of how they made From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and The Spy Who Loved Me. A lot of fun. And that's our podcast too. We did it in 2 parts.
Awesome. Arthur, what do we got going on next week on our show?
We are going to be talking for over an hour about Clint Eastwood, who is one of the great actors that ever lived in film, and also one of the great directors. Clint Eastwood is a humongous success story. He's made movies we've all seen, and we're doing Clint Eastwood next week.
That sounds fantastic. Well, awesome, guys. And I know over on Julian's podcast, I know this week he is getting ready to talk to Leslie Ann Warren. So I know that's coming down the pike for him. So we got some great shows over on Julian Schlossberg's Movie Talk. So you could definitely check that out. And you know what? On behalf of Steve, Arthur, and Julian, thanks for joining us for 100 episodes. We really appreciate it. This is your producer and announcer, Mike Faber, and we will see you here next time on Tales from Hollywoodland. Your Hollywood adventure starts right here.
We have a weekly podcast called Earth Station Trek where we talk about Star Trek.
Are we about to get into Star Trek fatigue again?
No.
And the fans are maybe getting a little tired of it?
No.
We have been doing this podcast for 4 years now.
And every single Thursday at 8 p.m. we do a live recording where we talk Star Trek.
So getting back to the future of Star Trek.
We're arguing about canon from 60 years ago. What are you talking about? That's what we do.
That's the future of Star Trek.
It's Earth Station Trek. We talk about Trek all the time. We'll be talking about it tonight.
Star Trek rules!
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.